All right. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Love Procurement Podcast. I am Vishal Patel from Ivalua, and I'll be your host for this conversation. And today, really excited to welcome Dr. Cari Miller to the show. Dr. Miller is the executive director of the AI Procurement Lab, and we'll hear a lot about that today. And really excited for this conversation as Dr. Miller has been, deep in AI research and helping to organizations, private and public, to figure out how they can safely buy AI and bring AI into their organizations to benefit from it, but do it in a way that's controlled and safe. But I'll ask maybe Dr. Miller to just kind of give us a little bit about your background and about the AI Procurement Lab, if you can.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for having me. I absolutely love this podcast. It's one on my regular rotation. So I was one of those people that started out when the digital transformation kicked off back in the 2000s, and I had a front row seat. And that's how my career started. So I was always in the front row of, okay, let's do this digital transformation. Let's do that one. And I loved it. And so I grew up with that. As my education progressed and my career progressed, AI is not new. We've been doing this for a while, right? We've been trying to figure out how to stop cyber threats with AI. We've been trying to figure out how to get on the front page of SEO results with AI. This is not new stuff. So I've been tracking this stuff for a while. But when I got to my doctorate program, I hunkered down on the fairness aspects. And that has been really interesting. And I've always been, because of being in digital transformation, I always gravitated towards the risk aspects of that. And so it was natural when I was in my doctorate work to look at the risk aspects of AI and the governance aspects. Every time I turned around, though, I kept thinking, why are we just not dealing with this in procurement? That is the rubber on the road. Like, you create all your strategies, and then it all comes together in procurement. That's where you take care of either not letting the bad stuff in or letting the bad stuff in, right? And so that was where my passion for procurement took hold, it kind of connecting this issue. And so I joined a working group with IEEE, and we published IEEE 3119, which is the first and only, as far as I know, international standard for procuring AI responsibly. And it's focused on high-risk use cases, mainly for government use, but it has extensions, obviously. And so that was how the AI Procurement Lab was born, because as we were doing that, we kept getting asked, like, is this ready? And we're like, something's here. So the Procurement Lab actually does research, continues research in that area.
Great. And just to be clear for listeners, AI Procurement Lab, you're doing research on the purchasing of AI tools.
Yes, we get confused a little bit because there's two needs, right? We have to know how to use AI in procurement as professionals. And then we also need to know how to buy AI responsibly. So we focus on buying it, not necessarily using it, although they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, which puts us at iValue kind of in the middle of right in the middle of that. But yeah, interesting, and I'm sure it's has expanded and sort of blown up a little bit in the last couple of years with all of the agentic AI, generative AI, and so on. So you mentioned something in your comments. You said don't let the bad AI in. What do you mean by that? What do you what is the bad AI, and how does someone differentiate the bad AI from the good AI?
Yeah, that's one of my catchphrases. Don't let the bad stuff in. I feel like it's like a Trojan horse situation. This is not a new concept, right? When we buy IT, we call it residual risk, right, in IT. So we want to make sure that we're looking for what are those things that were unaddressed by the AI provider or the developer that they are now handing over to us as the buyers? And so the problem is with AI, you still have the IT aspects of it. So you still have, oh, they didn't do, the some security things that were basic, just it's still an IT product. So there you have the basic stuff. But with AI, now you have ethical risk and ethical debt that is now being passed along. So did they not check the data for bias? Did they weight the model in a way that produces the results that create outcomes that are unfair? And so that gets a little tricky. And your one chance to figure that out is in procurement. Because once you've bought it, you've let the bad stuff in, and good luck getting it out, because we know how switching costs work. So
Yeah.
my bad stuff is I would call it ethical debt. You
Yeah.
already know about technical debt. This is ethical debt.
And maybe a step before you kind of get to the, do I let the good or the bad AI in? If we take a step back uh, before that. So in the last couple of years, what's happened is, first, every software company is now an AI company. And every use case is now, an AI agent use case.
Right.
Somehow, magically, everyone got there. But from our standpoint, obviously, I have a bit of a bias here with iValue, right? So, and I think you'd agree with this, that one thing that differentiates good AI from bad AI is the quality of your data, right? So, good AI has good data. I think that's pretty logical.
Yep.
But when a vendor um, is building AI on a cracked sort of data foundation, meaning maybe the vendor has grown by acquisition, maybe they've built new products that are different data models, and kind of put AI on top of that. In our standpoint, like that's a bit of a, not danger, but you're adding some risk, because you don't know, is the AI search or the agent going to leverage, is it going to use a duplicate data that you have because you don't have a single data model? Like, so from your standpoint, I don't know how deep you get in the sort of that technical aspect, but how would you say people evaluate different vendors from that standpoint, in terms of sort of the data foundation part of it?
Right. It really, what's interesting to me, and this is one of the things I just can't look away from procurement. It's so fascinating. What's interesting is that every single procurement is unique. So there's no blanket approach to it. And so you take each use case and you dig in. And so what I mean by that is, when we talk about data, and you're spot on, like everything is that it's about the data, and then the model is kind of next, but the data really is the big chunk of it. So for example, if you're using, let's say you're buying a chat bot, or you're buying something that is going to turn into a chat bot. Okay, great. When you think of that data scenario, you want to think of, okay, was that data trained on Middle Eastern English versus UK English versus United States English? So that how you're thinking of investigating that as you're buying it is a little bit different than if you're buying a tool like you might have, where it's trained on contract data. And so in that case, contract data is a little more structured. So you would ask, like, how is that data labeled? And what labeling process did you go through? And can you tell me about your
Mm-hmm.
correctness and robustness? And so those questions are different. So it just depends on the use case. And that is why AI literacy, honestly, if you're going to start with some place in this entire landscape, it has to be just generally understanding how AI works.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's helpful, and I think the data topic obviously is a big one.
Mhm.
You've talked about procurement. So obviously you're diving into the purchasing part of AI tools, but then in that process is obviously IT and sort of the CIO office. Um, how would you say the two kind of differ, and or how should they work together to figure out the right AI tools for the business? And I'm sure you've had similar conversations like this, but yeah, any insights there on what does the CPO do when they're looking to buy an AI tool? What does the CIO do, and how do they leverage procurement knowledge? So that's an interesting area for us.
Yeah, I absolutely love this question. Only because the answer is obvious when you hear it out loud, and that yet in practice, we somehow always tie our shoelaces together. Um, it's like buying AI is a team sport. We know that. Like, there's not a single individual that would be like, I know everything about AI. I know how your domain works. I understand your process flows and the nuances of them. And I understand the AI lifecycle. And I understand how data and models work. And I know what CNNs and RNNs and ANNs and how they all work. Like, there's no single person that knows all that. So you have to have all the relevant people at the table, legal and, all that stuff. Yet, what do? Someone from a division's like, oh, that's a cool pilot test. I want to do that and we're going to buy it. And the CIO is over here going, you did what? Like, somehow we don't figure it out when we really just need to get to the table together.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. You mentioned pilots also. So obviously a lot of noise in the market about how I don't know, the MIT study on 95% of pilots fail to deploy broadly various use cases of the ROI of AI currently being fairly low in enterprise, and maybe somewhat expected with new technologies, I guess. But when you think about how many billions or trillions now that are being spent on it, it's maybe a little bit concerning. But any thoughts on that in terms of where are organizations, either private or public, sort of in that journey? Are we still in the sort of piloting and figuring out if it's going to work part, or are we starting to move out of that? Any thoughts on that?
Well, that was 17 questions in one.
Sorry.
Let me pick one thread on that. And again, it goes back to organizational discipline. So organizations that literally take the time to say, what are my business problems? Let me prioritize those business problems. Let me see which of those business problems make sense. You do the root cause analysis. You make sure it's not a person that just needs fired versus it's an actual problem that could be solved with AI. Like, if you've gotten that far and you have that discipline, you're 50% there, right? And then you start looking at adjudicating which of these solutions make sense. And then you get, the few that might make sense, and then you pilot test, and then you go through. Like, that is a much better scenario. But then you ask, like, what's actually kind of working. And so there's layers of what's working. The independent productivity tools, can someone use Gemini to boost productivity for writing policy drafts? And those are working. Like, people are figuring that stuff out, whether it's in a shadow form or not. That stuff's working well. I think we're getting a little bit better at what I would call the next level, which is where we're feeling a little better about putting some of our data in there, although I'm not sure we have good, data discipline yet. But there are people who I call them getting ready to get ready. So they're working on their data. They're getting ready to get ready for that big game, to be able to use their data. And then the ones that really are still piloting, that we're just not there yet, are those ones that have that reaching for the brass ring of the agentic. And they don't always have the right definition of agentic. Everybody, like you said earlier, somehow magically everyone has agents.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all pilot stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, we're at different levels.
Yeah, and you've mentioned public and private a little bit. What do you see as the difference in those two? Is there any sort of big differences in how organizations are thinking from an AI deployment usage standpoint in public versus private sector?
Oof. That's an interesting question. No one has asked me that. Private sector is probably much further ahead in being able to do some wild testing on their own, like just a little more innovative in how they're able to just run and fail. Like they can do that. Public sector, I find them to be very thoughtful in how they're innovating. Like they have come up with some genius stuff. And I say that because I participate with the GovAI Coalition, and if you have anybody in here that's in this state or local level, get with that group. They are, man almighty. I mean, like one group put sensors on trash trucks to detect potholes that sent signals back to show where the potholes were. It was genius. Another group got together and they did translation pairs to be able to translate websites and chatbots into like 80 different languages for information that is relevant to public service. So emergency announcements and things like that's like, oh, I didn't think of that. So they're doing really creative things that are meaningful and they're successful. Yeah. So they're
Yeah,
public have
the
different.
scale of public sector sometimes is different, and then obviously having to be transparent about the data, the policies, and all that, especially in public sector procurement,
Yes.
where they have there's a need for not only modernization but also obviously transparency, control, risk, all that stuff.
That's interesting though, because there's only a handful of states that have some laws and regs about how you're buying AI. There's not a lot of states that have like rigidly said, don't do it this way or do it this way. What I'm seeing are the humans inside of the state saying, this feels like it could be dangerous to people. Maybe we should or shouldn't. Like, I don't know, the police should be having those cameras like that. Like, we should not let them do that. Like, it's not the lawmakers. It's just humans
Yeah.
being like responsible people, which is
Yeah, actually,
refreshing.
we have just on that track, we have a customer that has deployed AI with us recently, but it's a German company. And what I found interesting there is that they had to get approval from the German Works Council in order to deploy the AI within their organization. So the Workers Council had to sort of approve that the AI is not, displacing people.
Oh,
But
really?
yeah, so I haven't heard of any of that kind of thing happening in the US, but that's definitely I think sort of standard policy maybe in Germany and other countries in
Well,
Europe.
Europe has that kind of an issue. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Maybe just one last question I had. So you have sort of obviously a lot of thoughts on purchasing AI and what organizations need to think about when they are buying AI in terms of risk and so on. What about from the other side? So as a vendor, obviously, every vendor wants to sell their solutions and now AI solutions into large corporations. What have you seen from that side, if anything? I'll give you an example. Like from our side, it sort of been drowning in AI risk questionnaires.
Yes.
As a vendor, right? Now,
Mhm.
obviously, we'll get better at it and we'll be more efficient and so on. And I totally understand the need to do that, right? It's obviously part of the risk assessment sort of evaluation. But any thoughts on that side of things? Like how do we sort of get better at that?
Well, I can tell you what I see and what my gut says, because it is emerging. You're exactly right. Those vendors that are developed by, so when you have a product that's developed by a subject matter expert, so you've done procurement for 30 years, and now you want to create an AI that helps people do procurement better. And so you hire IT to help you, but you're the lead because you've done the procurement and IT is just supporting your vision. Those companies tend to be more genuine, more true to what they're selling, and they're more rigid about trustworthiness in their products. And that's the key, is the trustworthiness. And so if a vendor can convey trustworthiness, and you can do that in a number of ways, it's always through your marketing, right? So the way that you talk about your product, your conviction, and being able to actually speak to your domain, but also showing, this is how I tested it. This is what the test result was. This is what my governance. I follow ISO 42001. I follow NIST. I follow, whatever you're doing. I'm SOC 2 compliant. Whatever those things are. I had a third-party auditor. The more you can do that, the better off you are. So the vendors that are not doing that and that are making these big, giant promises of like, we have no bias, we check those are very suspicious. The other vendors that I'm always suspicious of are, and I'm sorry if this offends anyone, but if they're just coming from investor perspectives, the billionaire hired 8 programmers. We think this is a rich market. We think we can get people. And that, I always need to investigate them a lot more than someone coming from the domain.
Yeah, and there's a bit of an explosion of the
Yes.
AI native sort of companies, which some will end up doing great things, I'm sure.
Maybe.
But there's just so many of them now. It's can be difficult to assess sort of the market and the capabilities properly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. It was really great to have you on the show. I wanted to maybe just ask if you had any other sort of thoughts you wanted to leave our audience with. We usually it is called the Love Procurement Podcast, so I will end the question on like what makes you love procurement. But if you had any other thoughts to leave the audience with, would be happy to hear that.
I have one thought that I am just, I'm so compelled to say this because I do love procurement and I do love AI. And so this is a cautionary thought, because the other side of the coin of buying AI is using AI, right? And so we use AI to do procurement sometimes. Back to your data question. If we think about our procurement data and how we're going to use that procurement data to help us buy things, what do we know about that data? It's historic, right? It's all about things that we've bought before. So when we use our AI to help us do our job for procurement, we're using data that has helped us buy historic things. Have we bought AI before? Not really. So when we're using the AI to do our procurement job, and you want to use it to say, how should I buy this AI tool? Remember, the data that's inside of whatever you're asking has never bought that AI tool. Okay. So can you use your little AI thing to help you do your procurement job? Yes. It's going to be great for commodities. It's going to be great for service contracts you've done 20, 30, 40 times. That's great. Is it going to be great for buying AI agents? Absolutely not. It has never done that before. So that's my cautionary tale. And why I love procurement is because that is the rubber on the road. It is the gate. It is the front door. It is where you decide, am I going to let the bad stuff in? You are the king of the castle if you're in procurement.
Wonderful. Awesome. Great answer. And thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. And hopefully we'll have you back sometime soon.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.